Greetings, friends. Believe it or not, it's a Monday here in Bali, Indonesia, 22nd of January. And I think for most of you looking in, it's your Sunday. I think I'm right in saying that. We've had a hell of a time scheduling the various broadcasts in the last 10 days or so since I've been here in Southeast Asia, back at home for the first time in 2 years. I'm very happy today to have my beloved colleague and co-pilot, Scotty Sachs, who I'll bring in imminently, just to nod in the direction of the Kali Yuga. Some of you will have seen the broadcast that we did a few days ago, which reached, actually it was the biggest live broadcast we've done, believe it or not, proving that amongst the gun-wielding, Bible-wielding and gun-toting patriots, there are also a lot of bohemians amongst you who also understand the movement of the spheres and the fact that in point of fact, astronomically speaking, this last week has been a signature movement in the spheres, so to speak. Whereupon we have momentarily, we're relaxed or relinquished from the death grip of the Kali Yuga. For those of you who've read the Mahabharata and our studies of ancient arcane subjects like the Hindu epics. But indeed, I'll tell you, it was an extraordinary week. There was a big shift point that occurred, energetically speaking. A lot of big, bold, bright, wonderful things are beginning to transpire in the world, he said as a helicopter flies overboard. Very, very rare in this part of the island, I can tell you. Sorry if I'm being drowned out. But in any event, I just wanted to nod in the direction of the celestial spheres and the fact that there has been an epochal node point that we traversed this last week. I sense it very, very deeply. I have a very, very positive and optimistic sense of what is about to unfold, unravel in the world. Scotty Sachs, happy to have you here, brother.
Hey, Sasha, hola, amigo, ¿cómo está?
Yes, I'm not very good at that language, so I shan't embarrass myself. Try German and French or Dutch, and you might just get
Bonjour, monsieur, comment ça va?
Oh, très bien. Very good, Scotty. Scotty, I just want to discuss one thing today. Actually, there's two things on the plate. Let me just throw up a slide momentarily. This one here. Can you see this?
Sure do.
Tennessee bans Agenda 2030, other globalist United Nations schemes. So Tennessee just became the first state to ban the Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and any UN resolution adopted by the federal government that would encroach upon the rights of Tennesseans and the Constitution. Now, that, I have to say, is pretty big news. It was followed yesterday by Sweden, the country. So it does seem as though, because if we see a dominoes happening here, particularly with respect to the Agenda 30 of United Nations, if we see a domino effect taking place in the next few weeks, we know everything we've been prognosticating over the last couple of years is entirely on point. Babylon is falling, and it all does come down ultimately to the greatest compact ever struck, which was the United Nations Global Compact, the so-called Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainability Goals, the United Nations Convention. So when that falls, we know that Babylon has fallen. What say you?
Sasha, we've been talking about this. You know, you were on Sovereign Radio in July when we were at the Reawaken America tour, and you said on the show that day, Babylon has fallen and redemption is here. I believe Tennessee is the first of many states that will blow Agenda 2030 out of the water. Texas, West Virginia. I know of other states working on this agenda, and I think it's just a great sign of the times. The German people are alive and well and awakened. They're coming out of the woodworks all over the world, Sasha. We're seeing this moving from this great awakening to the great redemption and the great accountability era. I think the powers to be and the cabal and Lucifer's cult are going to all be held accountable in the next few years.
Very good. And what comes beyond absolution and redemption is salvation. I was just saying, you know, I'm feeling very, very positive about where we're headed. Ron DeSantis just jumped out of the race today. So speaking to the American patriots there, what are your thoughts on what's likely to transpire now that DeSantis has thrown his stuff in?
Well, they're all playing a role, as we know, Sasha. Vivek played a role. Ron's role was to go in, shake up a little dirt, and then throw a support to Trump. Nikki Haley's likely playing a role. I would say she is playing a role as a spoiler in a lot of ways, but she's a globalist through and through in her heart, in the goodness of her heart. She's a globalist pig.
What, a globalist has a heart? Scotty Sachs.
Well, she may be one of the humans in the globalist reptilian camp. I do believe she's got some decency left, but look, she's been compromised her whole political career. She was never one of us. And look, they're all playing a role, Sasha. They're all folding their tent and going home one at a time.
Very good. Very good. Okay, Scotty, I'm going to pop you to the side as I introduce Dr. Schwartz, Michael Schwartz, the author, friends, of the much talked about book published by our good friends at Skyhorse, called Fauci's Faction, the book on COVID, which examines the real science behind COVID-19 and what the media and the government never told the public. And the book includes metadata from over 19,000 patients receiving over 44,000 tests, and incorporates the data from antibodies and vaccines to paint a true picture of what COVID really looks like from the 30,000 foot view. Very, very happy to bring Michael on. Besides bringing the harsh reality of the COVID-19 theater to the masses, he is also an entrepreneur and a philanthropist who's won many distinguished awards for his work. He founded various companies since 1993, one of which was the first in New Jersey to conduct COVID-19 testing. And he owns and operates 3 medical clinics in both New Jersey and Florida. Scotty, don't you hate such accomplished human beings? I got to break this. I mean, just too accomplished, too brilliant. Anyway, I'm going to bring him on now. He's an accomplished private pilot as well, friends, a former police officer, communications coach, and stand-up comedian, would you believe it, who's appeared on multiple television and radio shows. Michael, I hate you. You're so welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you. You own 3 clinics. You were the first in New Jersey to do COVID tests. You believe that you've acquired more data than just about anyone in the industry. Can you share with us what you found?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. As I said, we were the first, and we kind of fell into COVID testing by happenstance, because when COVID reared its head, all of a sudden we started losing clients like crazy, because we do a lot of travel clinic stuff. So wellness exams on site, police departments, school districts, what have you. And as everything started to shut down, we had been doing what's called a respiratory pathogen panel for many, many years. As I like to say, that my patients knew what COVID swabs were long before the rest of the world. Because if you had come to us years ago and you were sick, we were going to swab you to see what was going on. That panel had 31 things on it at the time. Now it has 31 to include COVID. So we can kind of get into that. But we found ourselves being the first people out the gate to test, and learned a lot along the way. I guess first and foremost, I'd tell you that we had 19,000 patients, did over 44,000 COVID tests. And the data started to appear pretty quickly. The trends were showing that all of our patients were getting this. They were getting over it within a couple of days. We predicted that the mortality rate of COVID would be about 0.01 to 0.02%, not much higher than the flu. And we predicted that in April of 2020, just about a month into testing. It only took us a couple hundred patients before we could tell you that the majority of our patients, in fact, 85 to 90% of them, were asymptomatic or mild. And there's a lot of science behind that. We can get into that as you go along.
Very good. Now, in the book, you expose the lies and myths most of the public knows nothing about. And we've probably covered most of them among all the different doctors and whistleblowers who've been on this show. But to cover all our bases, can you just give the audience what you consider the 30,000 foot view?
So the book itself is not about Anthony Fauci. It's called Fauci's Fiction. He gets the brunt of the cover because of, he was the guy on the podium, right? So he gets the brunt of the cover for Dr. Birx and Dr. Belinsky at the CDC. And the book itself is going to give you the basic science of COVID. It's going to explain it from A to Z. There are still people to this day that don't understand what a virus is, how it transmits, what the incubation period is. They don't understand the difference between isolation and quarantine. And I think that's probably the biggest travesty. We could have kind of got on the same page really early on and told the public the basics of this thing, how masks really work, how long the virus sustains in your system. And we're talking about basic stuff that the public could have known within the first couple of weeks to kind of quell everything. But I mean, we talk about masks. We don't wear masks for virons. I mean, it's the second dumbest thing I've ever seen in my career. Of course, we get into the vaccines, talk about what the vaccines do, but we talk about what we see right in our practice from the patient level. The folks that were talking on television for all these years, were doom and gloom that everybody was going to die from this thing. And, to give you a little perspective, I had 4,000 positive patients out of the 19,000 patient load that I had. We didn't lose one. We only had 4 go to the hospital. These folks were recovering quite nicely right from the beginning, and we didn't need to go through this exercise that we did with the lockdowns and the masking and, suicide rates going up, what have you.
Very good. Speaking of Fauci, what's become of Fauci? We haven't seen him on the headlines. And speak about this creature for a moment.
Well, he's retired. Now they have him on Capitol Hill answering questions. I think the Senate is really trying to grill him about the origins of COVID, which is another story to go, down the rabbit hole. But we really need to talk to him about is what they knew and when they knew it, because if they had the data that we had as early as, April, May of 2020, like we did, why they continued this narrative is kind of, somebody's got to be culpable here. I mean, you disrupted a lot of lives. We were screaming at the top of our lungs, but no one would listen. Like I said, as early as April of 2020, saying, hey, we've got some data here and it's not matching what you're talking about on television. Can someone please look at what we're seeing? Because this isn't the same story that we're hearing on TV. And that message got quelled right away. The censorship, matter of fact, I get censored just about every day. YouTube, Meta, they're the biggest challenges for us. They pull down interviews like this. When you put a post up about the book, it gets censored. Amazon, one of my distributors, I've tried to promote the book on Amazon. Amazon has sent me 3 letters citing what they say is current events, whatever that means, because we're 4 years into this. Someone somewhere does not want the truth out about COVID.
So are you confident that the Anthony Fauci's of this world are going to face justice at some point? What is your personal sense of it?
I mean, I doubt it. I hope they do. Again, I think somebody's culpable here. But I mean, he answered questions the other day. I think it was over 100 times. He said, "I do not recall." I mean, I recall the last 4 years pretty intently, considering what we went through. I do not recall is a great way to skirt a lot of answers, but I don't think he's going to be held accountable. I mean, I hope so at some point. But what's the smoking gun at this point? What do you want to hold? There's so much minutia when it comes to COVID and who was involved and kind of, what happened. I don't know what specific charge you could charge him with.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's very, very nebulous. The same thing with Bill Gates. Where exactly does Gates fit into it? He's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman, ostensibly, the richest twat on the planet for many years. But it's very, very difficult to pin a tail on the donkey. But then again, that's Babylonian chess. Babylonian helter-skelter was designed precisely in that way to obfuscate any clear objective. Scotty, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see remedy with these evil caricatures?
Well, I'm hoping that guys like Tom Renz, attorney Tom Renz, who told me the very early on in COVID in an interview on Sovereign Radio that if he will go to his grave working toward retribution and seeing Anthony Fauci stand trial for crimes against, how about crimes against humanity as a start? Now, it's hard to prove that, obviously, but with data like you have, Michael, sure as shit helps to begin the process of proving out a case. Look, your data was going to be ignored because it didn't fit their agenda, Michael, and they couldn't afford to present your data to the public. They couldn't afford to get it out, so they ignored you. They silenced you and ignored you and censored you and did everything they could to keep your data at bay and to keep it under wraps, because you have the kind of data. I believe that a good lawyer like Tom Renz, I got to connect you with Tom Renz. If you haven't been connected to him, there are lawyers, Sasha, as you know, Tom Renz, And there are several others working to see justice served to these people. They do have a legal a group that's working on this stuff, and I'm optimistic. I like to think the glass is half full. I understand why Michael would say he doesn't think there's going to be retribution, because where the hell do you start to prove this stuff, right? How do you really go about making the legal case for crimes against humanity? But Tom Renz is comfortable that he can, Sasha.
Any questions for Michael?
Yeah, Michael, 50 years from now, what do people remember about this event, COVID?
I think they look back just like we do at history sometimes, and we watch, black and white videos, and we kind of laugh and go, "This is what they were doing. This is how they reacted."
Right.
And I said that right in the middle of COVID. I said, that this is stupid. People are going to, they were wearing what? They were wearing masks on airplanes. They were, we don't do that. I mean, I have a whole chapter on masks, which is pretty funny. I insert some comedy in there, of course, because, I'm also a comedian, which you mentioned. And by the way, the book's not on Skyhorse. I don't want to that I know my publicist works with Skyhorse. Hopefully my second book will be on Skyhorse. We're working toward that.
Apologies for that production oversight. Joanne, you got a lashing in the back room for that. Carry on.
Joanne's been great. I just want to make sure that was clear. Tony's great at Skyhorse, and hopefully the second book we're getting into is going to talk more about the vaccines, because that's kind of where we left off in the first book. My first book was, if somebody reads this is the conversation I had with every single patient for all 4,000 positives. And I got tired of telling everybody, what a virus is. You're not supposed to keep coming back to test. This is how testing works. We really get into the minutia of, rapid test versus PCR and co-infection. The majority of my sick patients, by the way, had a co-infection if they were sick. And that's the data, Scotty, that you really kind of be interested in, because when I said 85 to 90% of these patients were asymptomatic, they didn't have a classic symptom. And most people, when they get sick, whether it's a flu or a cold or COVID, they expect to have a cough, a fever, shortness of breath, something like that. We learned so much through mass testing in this exercise that we can really transform the way we handle medicine in the future. But we refuse to do that. There are so many people who haven't learned a thing from COVID, not just on the medical side, but of course, on the political side, the ramifications, what we did to everybody. But there's so much medicine in here. When you properly test and you understand what you're looking for, you learn a lot. The sickest of the sick, as I mentioned, had a co-infection. Just to give you an example, I had a guy about 2 years ago who came back positive with COVID, staph, H flu, and RSV all at the same time. Now imagine if that guy went to the Walgreens and got a rapid home test and said, "Oh, I got COVID. It's the worst thing in the world." No, he wasn't sick from that. He was sick from the H flu and the RSV. We needed to treat those. So you really have to diagnose these things appropriately. And the medical community hasn't really done that. They don't really understand this. You have urgent care still using rapid tests. The science of rapid tests, I mean, you might as well throw those things out. They do absolutely nothing. A negative tells me 0, and a positive, positive could be any coronavirus or 7 we test for in the office. So the book itself doesn't get political. It just gives you the science. It gives you the data that we saw. And of course, it doesn't make Fauci and Walensky and Birx and all them look very good, because when you understand the science, you're going to look back in the future, like you just said, and say, what the hell were they doing?
Right. I mean, those rapid tests, speaking about that was something which was like a mind virus all over the world, but it does do something. Those kinds of protocols do something. They generate billions and billions of dollars overnight for special interests. I mean, has anyone done the toll on how much money was generated just through the medical science fraternity with this kind of bullshit COVID testings and what have you? Has anyone done the math on that?
I'll tell you this, we were promised to get paid by the CARES Act for anybody who was uninsured or underinsured. And I'll tell you, out of the thousands that we did in those categories, we got under $10,000. And that was before the government said, stop billing the CARES Act. We're out of money. So we're on the hook now for a lot of patients that we tested. Now I still got to pay my staff and my rent and all that nonsense in my office. They didn't care about us. I don't think we even got paid on one vaccine that we administered. Now, I didn't like distributing vaccines. We didn't do it in New Jersey, but I had a couple practitioners in Florida who we had access to them, and we did them in the beginning. I had talked a lot of patients out of getting a vaccine. I never recommended one, and they're the first dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, and that's another topic. We should really stop using the word vaccine, because when you say that to somebody who's 60, 70, 80, 90, they're thinking inoculation, long-term immunity, polio, Hep B, whatever. These
Right.
things give you, in practice, a 120-day antibody response, which we've measured. And I also have the data on natural immunity antibody response, which is exactly the same, 120 days, but you don't get the B and T lymphocytes from the shots that you do from natural immunity. So that stuff's all discussed in the book. It really gives somebody that overview that there's so much science that no one's ever really talked about. And it would benefit everybody to just get on the same page.
Very good. So the elephant in the room, as far as I'm concerned, disease X. What are your thoughts about what is upcoming? Because for sure, what we saw in the last 3-4 years was something of a litmus test, something of a litmus test toward a greater objective or intention to collapse consensus into every human being everywhere on the face of the earth, bonded to their treasury bonds and their registrations to their friendly government, are going to be forced into compliance with this globalist harmonizing principle, which is coming, whether we like it or not, it's coming. I mean, unless you flee from Sodom and Gomorrah into the hinterlands, and even then you're going to be subject to Skynet and all that dastardly stuff. But what are your thoughts about this disease X that's being touted? Do you think that this is something very real?
Well, we're not ready for it if it comes. I don't think. Obviously, there's stuff out there. I just heard we were doing something on my show in Two Mike's Live. We were talking about this coronavirus that attacks the brain. I don't know if you saw that study. There was 8 mice that were given this coronavirus, and it killed all 8 within 8 days by diseasing their brains. Essentially, there's 100% mortality. So you hear about this stuff that's going on in the labs, and the first question is, why are we doing this? Why are we genetically engineering more viruses in labs? Because let's say it did come out of Wuhan accidentally, right? Let's say it was released accidentally and it went around the world. I think at some point there were some agencies who said, let's play this scenario out. We've been waiting to see what's going on. I think those people had the same information I had, knowing that it wasn't as deadly as it was, and said, let's play this out. And they could see how much control they can get from the populace. And I always wondered myself, like, what is the break even? Like, where's the critical mass? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Is it 70-30? What percentage of the country has to go along with something so ridiculous that everybody else has to comply with it? And my co-host mentioned to me the other day, he goes, well, look at Nazi Germany. It was like 3% of the country who then took over the entire country. And I said, I never really thought of it that way. It's really a small amount of people who can make something like that go. So if the critical mass is small and you do have something like a disease X happen, I think everybody's on pins and needles. But also because they lied so much about what these vaccines did, Fauci on TV saying you can't get it, you can't give it. You had multiple people saying that in the administration.
Right.
It really desensitizes people to control at the same time. So I think the government didn't do themselves any favors. They found out that they can control the population, but I think the next time something serious happens, they're going to have a lot of people worried that the message coming out isn't quite accurate. So it kind of, it's kind of a double dose
Right.
of, stupidity.
Yes, it is. Six of one and half a dozen of the other. And
Right.
I suspect that you're entirely right, that particular helter-skelter protocol has backfired very much. And I don't think people are going to buy that a second time around again. But I will say this, that a few weeks ago, I did an intel dump on the Patriot Street Fighters network with my brother Scott McKay. I'd been in touch for the last couple of years with a cardinal in the Vatican who gave me the intelligence to release and urged me to release it as urgently as possible. I went on Patriot Street Fighter Network and released the intel dump. Later in that day, I was pinned against the wall by Interpol and by US military brass, good guys, good hats, who wanted to know the source of my intel. And when I told them the source of the intel, they were very, very pleased to understand that was a direct, clear channel with somebody who's in the know, in the basement of the Vatican, connected to the Jesuitical cloisters. Point is this, and this was the intel drop, that a canister of a pathogenic strain is to be released, intended to be released into the River Seine in Paris during the swimming Olympics this summer. And that pathogenic strain is designed to catalyze the diaspora event where those swimmers return back to their countries, 150, 160 countries, whatever, and within a few weeks, boom, whether it's activated through EMFs or whatever, that is supposed to be the lethal pathogenic strain that catalyzes some ghastly planetary event, people dropping in the streets. Exactly what we didn't see with COVID-19, but we should have been seeing, given the level of hysteria and pandemonium, we should have been seeing people stagger around the streets, blood coming out of their ears. We didn't see any of that, as you've alluded. But if we do start to see that on the streets, then of course, the reflex, the psycho-emotional, psychocultural reflex is to surrender and, oh, government was right all along, and whatever they say goes. So that's the very real, I think, existential threat, the possibility of a real virulent pathogenic strain being released, whatever that may be. Like I said, let's not get into the virus stuff, but that intelligence was taken very seriously by top military brass and Interpol, who are now investigating, incidentally, because of that intel drop. They're investigating this. But does that sound like a likely scenario to you?
Everybody's on edge right now after 4 years of COVID and what we just went through. And I think that anytime you hear chatter like that, you have to investigate. I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't be culpable by doing nothing. You're just as culpable if you do nothing. You need to investigate at the very least. I think there'll be another pandemic at some point, whether it'll be in mine and your lifetimes, who knows? But at some point in the future, you'll see something else. I mean, we kind of, when COVID came out, we looked back to the Spanish flu of 1918, and that's what we started comparing it to. And what did they do then? And, how long did this last? And there has to be it's like kind of like living on planet Earth when you're looking for those planets out in the universe where you can sustain life. The virus has to have a specific R naught. It can't have a too high of a mortality rate because it'll kill off its host. When you have something like that, like we were talking about this brain thing a second ago that I mentioned, my co-host brought up the other day, it killed off all the hosts within 8 days. It's a 100% mortality rate. Something like that would burn out quicker than it would propagate. So that has to have this right mix of being able to propagate and get into a host. Like, despite what everybody thinks, viruses don't want to kill you. They want to sustain. So they're looking for the best host, the best version of themselves to survive, but they need a host to do that. Viruses aren't living things. Viruses are like amino acids. They're either active or inactive. But they mutate the moment they enter your system, looking, like I said, for the best version of themselves to survive. So the next thing that comes along, it has to have that right mix of, propagation. The R naught has to be right, and it can't have too high of a mortality rate, or you're never going to hear about it. COVID had a really high R naught, so it spreads quickly. But the damage that it does is, I think, and I'll tell you from experience, more long term than it is short term. We're seeing a lot of instances of issues from COVID-19, but the shots do exactly the same thing with the cytokines. They inflame areas of weakness and instability, and they're causing a lot of problems. So COVID is very real. It just doesn't kill you like you thought you would, when you watched it on TV and you're watching Italy locked down thinking, oh my God, if this thing comes here, it's going to kill us. Then when it came here, we realized everybody had it. Everyone is surviving. But it took some time to figure that out. And one of the reasons why it took so many lives early on is because two reasons. One, it was novel, and we didn't know. And the second is we didn't know how to treat it. A lot of the treatment regimens we used were making it worse. So if something new came out, we have to kind of synthesize it quickly, figure out the treatment regimens quickly, and be on our toes. But again, that's kind of my point. We haven't learned much from the last pandemic, so we really got to get on the same page of how all this stuff works, because when the next one comes around, we are completely unprepared right now.
Scotty Sachs, you got the floor.
I want to ask you, Michael, because I've asked every credible doctor, and I see you as one of those, and I've asked every pastor the same question. Why did the two communities who should have stood up come forward and told the truth? Why do you think your community of doctors cowered under COVID and either became co-opted into the game, into the fraud with Fauci, or they went silent? They didn't. Doctors as a whole did not stand up. Very few came out like you and Dr. Artis and the few that came out. Why is that? What do you think the reason is? Is it just fear?
I'll tell you exactly why. Well, first off, I'm a research doctor, not a medical doctor, but I manage medical staff. Now, my medical staff, and if you watch what MDs and DOs do, I'm upset with a lot of them. A lot of them shut their doors during COVID. A lot of them shut their doors. They didn't want to bring this thing home to their family, so they didn't. By definition, they didn't treat anybody doing this because they weren't at work. And what they did was they looked to the CDC for guidance, and the CDC had a narrative. And when you look at this, it's kind of funny. We've been pushing what I was talking about, respiratory pathogen panels, for years. There's a reason we use those, right? And to give you a little background, there's 41 million antibiotics written every year, 23 million are unnecessary. So you really need a reputable practitioner to do a respiratory pathogen panel to figure out what you're treating before you write an antibiotic and make sure you write the correct one, right? Most doctors don't do that. There is no money in primary care. Most doctors get 7 minutes with a patient. They have to overbook so they can, have enough patients just to make a profit for the day. They can't spend an hour with each patient. So they don't want to do things like RPPs, but it forces them to go quick, to write scripts quickly, because people have this Google instant gratification world. They want to make their patients happy. So they don't even understand some of the science behind respiratory pathogens. And I have an immunologist that I talk to every day, that we work with very closely. And I learn a lot from him and vice versa. He learns a lot from me, and we kind of look at the data together and say, well, what do you think? And we hypothesize. These guys don't have time to do that. So they're looking at the CDC. And if somebody comes to them saying, hey, doc, do I need this vaccine? They might look at that patient and say, you're 65, have comorbidities. And they're going to go, yeah, you should probably get it. That's the last person that I would recommend these shots. We didn't recommend it for anybody, but if you have something susceptible, you're the last person I want to inflame that heart issue, that joint issue, to make it worse. And look, I'm going to be very specific. We did not recommend a vaccine because we thought it was going to have issues for people. We didn't recommend a vaccine for two reasons. One, it doesn't work. It gives you a 120-day antibody response like a flu shot. And two, you don't need it. But these other doctors were thinking, because the CDC says you have to recommend it for this age group or this comorbidity, they were just looking at that. And the other ones who stayed silent were afraid, because the guys like me, or research doctors or MDs or DOs who were coming out that said that, we're getting their licenses pulled. Now, you can't do that to me. I don't have a medical license. That my staff does. But when we analyzed the data, they didn't want to talk to the analysts. They wanted to talk to the guy who had no experience testing or treating COVID at all, the cardiologist who was recommending a vaccine. And I always tell my patients, your best question to your doctor should be based on what? If they have no experience with that, their best answer should have been, I don't know, not the CDC narrative.
Very good. Michael, where can folks find your book now?
It's available everywhere books are sold. Amazon is the easiest place to get it, but it is available. And, despite the censorship, we'll keep pushing.
Very good. Dr. Michael Schwartz, thank you for joining us today on AGN.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
You too, Scotty. Thank you.
Wow. The man looks like he just left out of a Marvel comic. What a superhero.
Yeah. Well, he just left out of a New York Yankee baseball camp, so that's just as good, isn't it?
Well, there you go. There you go. I'm just seeing if I can, Scotty, I'm having some problems with my signal. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine, Sasha. You're loud and clear.
Okay. Joanne, give me a thumbs up in the green room if you can hear me okay. You can. Very good. Okay, Scotty, I'm just going to bring our next guest on. Friends, one of my dearest friends in the world, the remarkable Cathy O'Brien, a 30-year U.S. government whistleblower on the deep state, New World Order, MK Ultra mind control, and human trafficking at the highest level. She's the most well-known survivor of a government mind control program called Project Monarch, part of the CIA's Project MK Ultra. And on February the 8th, 1988, she was covertly rescued from her enslavement by intelligence insider, the heroic Mark Phillips. Their 7-year pursuit of justice was stopped suddenly for so-called reasons of national security. And of course, Cathy did not just survive her ordeal. She thrived and continues to inspire and teach all around the world how to heal. Most recently with her insightful book, PTSD, Time to Heal, useful for anyone willing to reclaim control over their own mind and lives. She's also written about her experiences in Transformation of America, which was the seminal book that she put out many years ago, which exposes the truth behind these covert government programs and the ultimate goal, which is psychological control of a nation. And in Access Denied for Reasons of National Security, both of which she co-authored and self-published with Mark, she also elucidates on the subject at hand. Cathy O'Brien, my darling friend, I'm so happy to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Sasha. That was a beautiful introduction, too.
Well, you know, Cathy, you're supposed to be here right now with me in Bali. You and Roseanne were supposed to be here, but we're having to push that back to later in the year.
I know. I'm so disappointed. I mean, it would have been absolutely wonderful, but sometimes, you know, even the most divine plans get disrupted and rerouted for, you know, who knows what reason, but there sure is a lot going on in the world right now. What an amazing time to have a voice and be making
Indeed.
a difference.
Well, you look as though you're in an enchanted forest, Cathy. There, I know exactly where you are, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll be in the US in a couple of weeks' time, so looking forward to spending some time with you. Scotty Sachs.
Hi, Cathy. How are you?
Hi, Scotty.
It's great to see you. You know, Cathy, the one thing I'd say about you, anybody that ever listens to you in an interview, gets a sense of who you are, falls in love with you. You're just one of those people that brings such positive energy from such a rotten situation that you were in, and you've managed to turn it around and make a beautiful life, and you bring beautiful vibes to people, and everybody loves you for that. So how are things? What's the latest with your book, and what's going on in your world?
And I really appreciate that. So sweet. My movie, Trance.movie, the Cathy O'Brien story on mind control, human slavery, and healing the nation, is actually going global. And people are embracing the information because the human trafficking issue is so pervasive, and it's finally in like everybody's face. And from having been exposed to that my whole life, I can just assure everybody that what they're seeing isn't new. What's new is that they're seeing it, and awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. And I'm so excited to see people waking up and taking that responsibility, not waiting on big government anymore, not waiting on anyone else to do the work for them. It's up to each and every one of us to make the difference we need to see in the world. And it's exciting to see that happening right now more than ever.
Yeah, you know, Cathy, the cat is out of the bag on human trafficking. You've been at it for a lot of years trying to bring it to light. I've been doing my radio show. One of the first shows I had 4 years ago, I talked about it. But it seems to be creeping, not into mainstream media as we know it, where, you know, the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the New York Times, but it is making its way through all of alternative media, truther media, patriot media, whatever we want to call our media. We're the mainstream media now, and everybody's talking about it. And you're a pioneer in this movement, and we have a lot to thank for you. What do you make of this? You've got to be heartwarmed by all the, I mean, it's a horrible subject, but you got to be happy that it's out there now.
I'm most happy to see people taking action, you know, getting out in their communities and talking with each other, eye to eye, heart to heart, and soul to soul, and reaching out to make the difference, not waiting on this corrupted system to do anything about it. We all know that's not working, but people are awake and aware. Their eyes are open to it, whether they want to see it or not. It's in their face, and they want to do something about it. And they're taking that action. I'm seeing groups meeting, you know, all over the country and really all over the world, where people are getting together to make that difference. I think the Epstein Island situation definitely brought a lot of information out, and there's been quite a few different things, but also a mass movement of survivors who have emerged to speak out and let people know just how pervasive this is, and you know, it's got to stop.
One of the great things coming out of our open borders, if there's anything good coming out of being invaded, is human trafficking is being brought to light every
Yeah.
day now. People are seeing
Yeah,
it
but
for what it is.
That started really with Trump in 2017.
Yeah, it
he
did.
started tearing the mask off that. I know that with what we did with the Westminster seatings in 2018, and we dedicated the International Tribunal for Natural Justice's Judicial Commission of Inquiry into human trafficking and child sex abuse. I dedicated those hearings to Mark Phillips, incidentally, in Westminster, London, on the day. And that was before I knew Cathy personally, because I had this huge love affair with Mark Phillips, who was really the alpha brain behind Cathy's rescue. And I've told Cathy this in the past. I never, ever speak to Cathy or speak to her in the public without alluding to and invoking the spirit of Mark, because he was just the most remarkable man. He's one of those seminal figures who comes in unheralded into this life, into an incarnation, and he played the pivotal role. Cathy, just let's honor Mark for a moment. Who was he to you?
Oh my gosh. He's amazing. Lived his life's purpose very, very well. But working the highest levels of intelligence, mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought. I mean, that was his job to begin with. And when he saw what was happening, when he saw the human trafficking and the child sex trafficking, and realized the pedophile agenda that's being pushed so hard as a mind control agenda, and he was livid that all of that was going on, and seeing little children being taken in and out of the White House, and decided to do something about it all the way back in 1988, before people knew there was a swamp, before they knew what mind control was about. And still, he knew, and he was not going to tolerate the criminal activity that he was seeing. He also saw where our birthright information on healing, our defense, the knowledge that's our defense against mind control, was being suppressed under national security. And that was not right. It's not right to suppress our birthright information for generations while humanity is conditioned to look outside themselves, to authority, to self-appointed, self-anointed leaders, to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult to cult religion, when the answers are within us all along. And we've been blessed with that. When he rescued my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. swamp and handed me keys to my mind, he reminded me that it's within me to heal. And those healing methods that he taught me are so profound to all of us, because it's a reminder of what we were born with. For him to take on a mission like that in life, that is more than political, that's definitely spiritual in its far-reaching effects, to be able to effectively release the information that he otherwise couldn't have, because he was bound by laws of sedition working in intelligence. But we were able to get the information out because I healed with it. I'm not bound by laws of sedition. So we got it released in 2016, before people really were aware of the magnitude of the problem. We knew the truth was going to come to light. We were so excited to see President Trump elected that so many people were already awake and aware. They overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in the voting machines. And once he was in and exposed it, people needed to wake up and embrace the truth. They needed to know what they could do about it. And it's all within us, and we all have that capability. And it started an evolution, like a spiritual evolution. And all that aside, of course, he was my soulmate, my best friend, and just absolutely amazing. And that love lives on in me. I continue our shared life's purpose, and I'm not going to stop as long as I'm here. I'm going to keep bringing that to light.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Cathy. When we were together a few months ago in Las Vegas, and we momentarily escaped the throng, the madding crowd, and I took you across the road into that mall because that was, oh, we were staying at the Trump hotel, but I took you across the road. Then we went for a walk. Then I remember as we were crossing the road, I was asking you the question, in real terms, how is it that you managed to survive all that you'd been through, and then with transformation and the books that you wrote, being such a perilous threat to the status quo. I believe, the first person in history to come out in writing and to name multiple presidents, heads of state, royalty, the whole gamut, put it out there. You and Mark tore the mask off the Leviathan in Technicolor decades ago. I never managed to compute in my brain how it is that you survived. I know what I've faced in the last 24 years. I know how many times my life's been threatened. I know the guns. I know the abductions. I know all the things that happened to me. And to my mind, that's light compared to the threat that what I represent as a threat to the status quo of the last quarter of a century. I believe is very light compared to the threat that you and Mark represented to the status quo. I could never understand how you managed to survive it, but you did explain it to me when we walked across the road, and I was paying such a keen attention to you. You explained to me about the protocol of you being able to say certain things and not being gettable, atable. Can you just go into that momentarily here?
Well, there's so many reasons why we were able to survive, and there's always a way to say what needs to be said. And most of all, we needed to just keep just the facts out there without opinion and without added information. But more than that, there's just such a huge aspect to this that is divine, and it's bigger than life. And as long as I'm alive, I'll keep living that purpose, because there's no other reason why I should even still be here. But love is the most powerful force in the universe, and everything that Mark and I ever did was out of love for humanity. It wasn't out of hatred or fear or bitterness or negativity. That's their vibration. It's what they feed off. We just kept our vibration high, living the love we are, and using that as a means of getting the truth out.
Beautiful. I have to toggle my screens whenever I'm referring to my notes here. Do you think that the human collective is ready to wake up now and pay attention? Most people simply can't wrap their minds around the topic of Project Monarch, MK Ultra, human trafficking, ritual satanic abuse, all of that stuff in the civilizational and cultural basement. Why would children be in such high demand? I mean, how is it possible people want to hurt children in such incomprehensible ways? These are things, Cathy, that the good human cannot cogitate, cannot comprehend, precisely because we are good humans. We can't wrap our minds around this. And so the natural default, of course, is to filter it out. But then the status quo depends on precisely that response from us, does it not? That we're so good foundationally that humans don't believe that these things take place. And so that is the canvas upon which eyes wide shut can take place, correct?
Well, yes, to a degree. They can't think like we do, and we can't think like they do. And when we understand that they're only a small handful and that we have all the power, all of a sudden it's not scary anymore. And that they've created an illusion that they do have all the power. They don't. They've kept us looking outside ourselves for so long. In fact, they feed off of that low vibration, dark, negative energy force. Their greatest fear, from having been around these perpetrators, their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit and the power of love, because that's where we win. That's where they lose. It's our infinite source of strength. It's where our wisdom is. When we have our free thought, free will, soul expression, we have our moral compass. We have the capacity to stand up and say no. And as Mark always said, wisdom outthinks their criminal mind every time, because they're just flat linear thinkers. We've got it all. We just need to remember that we've got the power. And we need to know that when we live the strength of the human spirit that they fear so much, they can't feed off of that. It's too high for them. It's not their energy. It's not their vibration. It's game over. We win.
Okay, so the other part of the equation, agreed on all of the above. The other part of the equation is why, if you have written in black and white and published the most unbelievable, slanderous, libelous statements and comments about the perversity of these icons, these presidents, these heads of state, and you put it in black and white, why have you never been sued or prosecuted for defamation, slander, or libel?
Well, national security was invoked on my 1995 testimony for Congress that detailed it all out. And the National Security Act means I would never receive conventional justice. And that meant I couldn't pursue that justice, nor could they try to stop me. It was already proven. It was already validated. It was already known. That's why national security was invoked on it. So in that regard, I've never been looking for conventional justice ever since. You know, a judge banging a gavel is not going to make the difference. What makes a difference is the ultimate justice of positive change through public awareness. And that's happening. And that's why I'm so excited. It's like seeing the ultimate justice unfolding right before my eyes, bigger and better than anything could ever be. And it's evolutionary because we evolve with the knowledge that is our defense against mind control. That's the knowledge. That's the truth that makes us free. And that's why censorship is so strong against truth, to try to keep that suppressed. But it's rising anyway. Like Scotty was saying, you know, this alternative media's got all the voice already anyway. And here we go, you know, and then people getting out in their communities and sharing word with each other. The word is spread. The truth is out there. We are by far the majority. And the media is not going to tell us that. So we may as well just claim our victory.
Very good. Scotty.
Yeah, part of that victory, Cathy, I'm sure you're aware that not only did Trump tear the mask off of it, but he took two actions that are so critical. Number one, he passed an executive order confiscating the assets of those who were involved in human trafficking. And they've done a lot of that, I might add. And number two, they took a blowtorch to the tunnels, the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. They've destroyed them in Ukraine, in Israel, in Taiwan. They're there now. Notice the countries that Putin and where we've got war, we've got lots of deep underground military bases and tunnels used for trafficking these kids. So the whole system is coming down, isn't it, Cathy? From the emotional part to the physical aspect of it, isn't it all blowing up in their face now?
Yeah, and even looking at the wall, when Trump built the wall, President Trump was just so wise to do that. And it was so exciting to me to see that finally being stopped, since that human trafficking and child sex trafficking was so much a part of my victimization from so very early on, when I was just a little itty bitty toddler. And seeing that wall built was so important because it stops their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking across open borders. And all those tunnels and everything else you referred to is all part of that funding mechanism. And we're stopping their money. You know, I mean, that's an ultimate. It's so important to them that you notice the very first thing when elections were blatantly stolen 2020 after mind control masks as a virus was unleashed on the global population, while we sheltered at home all masked up, and they stole those elections right in front of us. The very first thing they did was fling that border back open to their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking. Well, those funds have been, you know, cut off, and it's good to see that it's like hurting them where it matters most to them, because it's not that they need any more money. It's just they equate the money as power, and we need to just stop their power source.
You know, Cathy, you've really put an exclamation point why, in the end, we're going to win. You talked about conscientious effort to vibrate a very high level of love.
Yeah.
That's where you came from in this whole thing. You didn't do this for for yourself. You didn't do this. You did this for humanity and the love of humanity. They can't vibrate like this. They can't do this.
Right.
They're satanic cult. So in the end, I mean, it's just we can all feel it now. And when I talk to you, it's amazing. You always remind me of how good we are if we set our mind to vibrate, high level vibration of love, how good we are at it. Because look at your smile right now. It just radiates lots of love.
Well, it's so important that we all just live the love we are, because that's the whole purpose of life anyway, is to be able to live that love and live our life's purpose. It begins with free thought. They can't stop our strength of spirit, but they can inhibit our expression of it by using mind control and controlling our minds. And they're doing it on a global scale. When we understand the components of mind control, trauma is the basis of it. No trauma is more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child. Second to that is ritual abuse. And when we understand that, then we have the knowledge that's our defense against it. It's like knowing the magic trick. It loses its spell. It doesn't work anymore.
Can you ever really forget that ritual abuse you were a part of? Is that possible even?
Well, I don't know that it's necessary to forget it. I forgot it for 30 years. I mean, just during that whole time under MK Ultra, I couldn't think to bring it to mind.
That's true.
And now I don't dwell on it. I don't live in the past, but I'm acutely aware of what it involves, and it motivates me to want to stop it and to help the children and to make people aware and to do it in a way that empowers rather than overwhelms, because people need to hurry up and gather that strength of spirit and take action right now. The children need us right now.
Cathy, how are we going to take care of these? I don't know the number, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids that have walked a mile in your shoes and have been a part of this horrible, horrible process of human trafficking, satanic rituals, that Victor Avila saw firsthand when he was a border agent. He saw it with his own eyes. I've never seen it with my own eyes. You have, Victor. Enough people have seen it to know it is a real thing. How do we take care of all these kids that are going to come out of the system?
By reminding them it's within them to heal. It's within us all to heal. I'm living proof that we can heal from anything that life puts in our way, and to be able to overcome and live the life that we were intended to live. Because at this point, I feel like the childhood innocence that I had that was taken from me in childhood is still the essence of my being, because that's who we all are inside, is the purity and the innocence. And when we go back to that, we have it all. So we can all reclaim that. We can all live that and help the children remember the same way that Mark reminded me. And it's in PTSD time to heal. And it's very easy to self-apply because it's our birthright. It's been in us all along.
Cathy, what do you think when you look at this photograph here, which incidentally is one of my favorite pictures of you? What do you think when you see this picture? Can you remember this day?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I absolutely. The intensity that we were under, we were literally dodging bullets, and Mark was taking me to the safety and serenity of Alaska, and I was like safe for the very first time in my life. He knew what we were up against. Look at his eyes, and I was remembering it at least enough to know how happy I was to be safe, that my daughter was safe, and that we were on our way.
Incredible. Thank you. Last picture I want to show you is when I first saw you and where the world fell in love with you, I think was largely the Grenada interview or the Grenada talk that you did, which I think was the seminal payload of you and Mark to the eyeballs of the world. That's the way I see it in any event. That this day here, I think this was such an important dateline, not just for you, but for the whole world, when you took the stage and you delivered your payload on that day. What were your thoughts looking back at that day?
Well, it wasn't 1977. It was more around 90, 95, 96 that that we were doing that, because Trance was just coming out, and we had to release it in book form since national security was invoked on it, and we were speaking out. But that was one of many events that we had done, and it's just one that I guess there's videotape of that's prevalent. There were so many times to have an opportunity to speak out like that, and Mark and I did it all across the nation. We spoke out to law enforcement and border guards. We spoke out to mental health professionals. We spoke out to patriot groups. And then we expanded globally. And we started speaking out internationally, because it's a worldwide problem and people needed the answers and the solutions. So I'm just glad that's circulating out there so people can see, yeah, this goes back a long time. Mark and I spoke out for 30 years together. I've been speaking out for 35 years on mind control and healing from it. And again, I'll continue to do so as long as I'm here.
So I wanted to ask you your own thoughts and reflections on Donald Trump. I know that you and had some visibility in some events fairly recently. You're pro Trump, the Trump train, in the main, as I understand it. The connection between Trump historically and the Epsteins and the Clintons and all the rest of it, that's a lot of kind of regurgitated nonsense that keeps surfacing. The photograph of Donald Trump and Epstein, oh, well, they were in it together. No, he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago precisely for his nasty habits. But how does somebody resurrect themselves from being tarnished in the past? I mean, Playboys in Manhattan hanging out together in the 70s and the 80s was absolutely fine. It was de rigueur. But 30 years later, they're under the scrutiny of, the historical lens. How does someone like Trump get out from that tarnishing, which seems to be an incessant bugbear in his campaign? The association here with Trump and Epstein, I'm speaking about in particular.
Well, there was such a huge effort for character assassination by the media all along, because they were astounded when Trump was elected and became our president. It really freaked them out. So they've been working on that for a long, long time. As far as Epstein and Trump, people have to learn. They have to see what's going on. There were places, like I said, Mark saw children being taken in and out of the White House. He saw it. That means there can be a picture of him seeing it, but it's those life-changing moments. It's what gives us the insight and the knowledge that we need to have. And it definitely puts us in certain circles. So I think, too, another important aspect that we all need to consider is that rather than relying on one person to do everything for us, like they did when President Trump was in, they expected one person to drain the swamp from the top down. It doesn't work that way. It's up to each and every one of us to drain it from the bottom up. We have to do our part. And when President Trump is reelected again and hopefully allowed to keep, take the office this time, we have to do our part, or it's not going to matter.
Indeed.
And we all have to think through everything that's said, too, because it can be distorted. We can't expect people to be perfect. Examine the information. Stop focusing on the person. Look at the information. Look what's being presented to us, and then take responsibility for our own actions at that point going forward. And I think President Trump did everything he could to inspire that in people during his administration while he was in, and people have just been kind of slow to get that message.
Very good. So Child Trafficking Awareness Month is February. We're 4 minutes over time here. Last words and reflections there. Child Trafficking Awareness Month in February, in part thanks to you and the revelations you've brought to the world, Cathy.
Wow. With that, just thinking of Mark, rescued me February 8th, 1988. So it was in February. We always celebrated that above all holidays and anniversaries, or I mean, that was our big celebration, and all the more reason for celebration that people are opening their eyes and realizing what in the world is going on, because again, awareness is the first step towards positive necessary change. And then we all realize it's not about a month, it's not about a day, it's about forever. And we have to carry this knowledge forward, evolve with it, and above all, gather our strength of spirit, reclaim and retain our free thought, free will, soul expression, so that we can gather that strength of spirit. The children are counting on us. It's up to all of us now. Now is our time. Now's our time to shine.
Thank you, Cathy. I'll be calling you in the private in the next few days. Much love to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Cathy. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Well, what to say?
She's one of a kind.
Every time I'm flummoxed. I mean,
every time she's in the room, I get warm chills all over.
Yeah. And you know why? Because she represents this flame of the eternal mother. She represents the flame of the Magdalene. She represents the most saintly flame of the eternal mother. And I think that's why Cathy touches everyone who communicates with her, everyone who comes into that woman's presence. She's the spirit of absolution, the spirit of redemption. And that's the stuff that threads this camel through the eye of the needle. Indeed. Okay, we're running 7 minutes late for our next guests. Stand by, Scotty. I'm just going to read a slight introduction here before I hand the talking stick to you. So, friends, Kim Yater is the radio show host of the Take Your Power Back show and CEO of the National Take Our Elections Back initiative, working with leaders across the country in the United States. She is an entrepreneur, peak performance master coach, and dynamic speaker. And over the past 24 years, Kim has passionately coached hundreds of business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders to success. Her love for seeing people overcome adversity and choosing faith over fear and access their God-given power. She is a wife, mother of 4 amazing children, and newly a grandmother. Let me bring her on here. I have to toggle my screen. Kim, you're very, very welcome to AGM.
Thank you so much. An absolute honor to be with you, Sasha and Scotty. And I have to tell you, this is the second show in a week that I have followed Cathy. She is extraordinary. So what an honor to follow in her footsteps.
So, indeed. Scotty, you've got the floor. You're chairing this segment, Scotty. I'm going to stand to the side.
All right, Sasha, thanks. Well, Kim, we're here to talk about something you and I have been working on every day and every night for 3 weeks with 4 other amazing people and hundreds and thousands of others that are really involved now. And that is our Take Our Border Back Southern Convoy. We're going to rock the southern border in 3 states, California, Texas. And I understand Mr. Mark Anthony is with us. Is he there with you?
He's not here with me, but I know he says he's in a waiting room. So there he is.
There he is.
Yes.
This is our Director of Security, Mr. Mark Anthony. Right. And Mark is 11th Hour 007 Security, and he is the director of our security team. Security, very important, and he'll talk about why for this Take Our Border event back. Kim, I'm going to let you take the floor and explain the event to everybody.
Gosh, well, first of all, what an honor to be right here on this earth in this time period. You know, so many of us patriots have been fighting. So many of us freedom-loving Americans have been standing for truth. And we've all been waiting so long for someone to come and save us. Like, when is it going to change? You know, we're all waiting for the shift. You know, we're waiting for the 10 days of darkness. We're all waiting. That's the problem, is we don't need to be saved. We already have access to a savior. And my savior says that I will do even greater things than him. So for such a time as this, we have our teams, we the people have created the Take Our Border Back Southern Border Convoy. This convoy goes from Virginia Beach all the way to Texas, has a route along the way, hitting the states. And then we have a convoy coming from San Ysidro, California, converging in Arizona. 3 rallies go off on the same day. On February 3rd, we've got Arizona, we've got Texas, and we've got California. So, Scotty, why are we doing this? Is this like it's a pivotal moment in history that we are doing this. And the reason why we're doing this is because the time is now. We, the people, have come together. We, the people, have had enough. We, the people, are holding our elected officials accountable to closing that border. You and I both know, and every listener here is awake, that over 160 countries have entered this border illegally with the help of the current administration, allowed into this country, given money. They have been set up. They're given flights. Many of these men, mostly men, are of fighting age. And if we don't know, Venezuela has released their prisoners. Do your research. Children trafficked. Cathy, she shared, if you guys are just listening in, Cathy O'Brien, go listen to her story. She was trafficked. Now, United States is the biggest trafficking hub. So not to mention children being trafficked coming into the States, being sent out, who God knows where they're being sent. They're certainly not being protected, that's for sure. We've got veterans being pushed out of their housing. Pushed out. Why? Because the illegal immigrants need a place to stay. This is absolutely crazy. And fentanyl off the hook. Enough fentanyl in this country to kill every single American and more. So why are we doing this? Why wouldn't we? If we continue to allow what's happening, we've given up our sovereignty. We've given up our freedom. And our freedom and our sovereignty comes from our Creator. And that's what we've got to stand in. We, the people, come together peacefully and lawfully. We assemble together and we hold these officials accountable to closing that border, sending back the illegal immigrants to their homes. And my heart is that those babies, those children, are protected.
You know, Kim, I like to remind everybody the national security threat that's upon us. You know, after talking to Colonel John Mills, retired Colonel John Mills, who's very in tune with what's going on the border, and Victor Avila, who's been on this show, Rise Guerrilla News, a couple times, Customs and Border retired Special Agent Victor Avila, lost a friend in battle, his partner Jaime Zapata, fighting the cartel. Victor and Colonel Mills have both told me, when I've asked the question, will they use these illegal aliens in our country, the fighting age men you referred to, from China, from South America, from the Middle East, will they use them in militias, in posses, and use them to attack us? Forget what they did with BLM and Antifa in 2020, burning cities down. This is at a whole nother level, Kim.
Oh, yeah.
This is a whole other level. We're talking terrorist attacks, majorly staged, coordinated by our military, folks. Our Department of Defense, our military are arming these guys. They're training them, and they're going to cut them loose at some point if they need them to fight their battles, because all they got left is violence and war. They know, as Sasha said earlier, they know that they're done. Put a fork in them, and Babylon has fallen, and they're going down with it. So why wouldn't they use these men, these illegal alien men, to fight us on our own soil?
100%. Tonight I was on the phone with a military sergeant who ran for Congress. This guy is incredible. He knows the border of San Ysidro, California. He has helicoptered it. He has seen it for years. That guy was in Turks years ago. And do you know what he said to me? He said, Kim, back then we knew the cells that were in the United States. Do you think they're gone? The cells in the United States are still here, and now they're feeding them. This is the worst time. We've got to close this border and clean house.
Kim, let's bring Mark in, because one of the things people are concerned about with this convoy, which could potentially be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people hitting our border in a peaceful assembly. We're not going down to the border, folks, to tangle ass with the cartels or the border agents or anybody. We're going in a peaceful assembly, voicing our true power to take our country back through these kinds of peaceful assemblies in large mass. and everyone wants to know, will it be secure? Will I be safe? And I think Mark Anthony can address this. So, Mark, come on in, buddy, and why don't you tell us what we're doing, the precautions you are spearheading to make this a safe event?
So I'm working with various agencies across America that are constitutional sheriffs, Constitutional Police Officers Association. We have vetted our counties in which we're going in. We've made sure that we're in the best possible location so that we don't get any riff or backlash, and that we have their protection and the honor of the Constitution behind them. I'm working with Doc Pete Chambers out of Texas and his intel, and we're watching it very closely. But I can tell you that it was strategically picked out, each location for these events, for the safety. Now, people need to understand J6 scared a lot of people, and a lot of people stepped back. They were scared to even let their voices be heard. But the true fact is that's the District of Columbia. It's foreign territory, and they did away with due process. That's why these J6ers are still sitting there with no trial dates, because there's no due process. Well, you're out in America out here. This is the true America. So it's a lot different situation, a lot different laws, and the way things apply. And so we've done really good, and we're going to have some tight security in the meaning of the way of sheriffs, police officers, and so forth, so on. But it's very, very calculated.
You know, Mark, I want to come back to you and talk about the agenda. I know you have some thoughts, as I do, about what's the agenda of open borders, but I want to first get to Kim. Kim, tell us the important details of these three rallies that are coming off of a convoy that starts in Virginia Beach, and how people can find all the details about the rallies, because that's really the event itself.
Yes.
Let's get into the details.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so love the details. So most importantly, our website is being updated over every single day, and it will keep people abreast as to what's going on. They can go to takeourborderback.com. That's takeourborderback.com. You're going to see the information, that is the direct information as to the convoy, where it's traveling to, where you can actually pick up a space, where you can drive into a meeting space. I mean, today we were just planning California. We know that we're going to be meeting up in El Centro. That's a place where we're gonna take a potty break there. I got 4 kids. We say potty breaks. We're gonna take a potty break there and get gas there, and then make sure that those that are coming in from other states can join us there, and then we traverse over to Yuma. So keep updated on the takeourborderback.com. And then we've got Twitter pages. The Twitter pages are We the People. So it's We the People TOBB Convoy. We have a main page. We also have a TOBB Convoy California page, Arizona page, and Texas page. This is where we're keeping people updated when they're in the midst of the convoy. Now, you're going to want to know in just a bit. And Scotty's getting the video. So let's pause, because this is going to give you a taste of what's going on and why we're doing what we're doing.
Joanne, go ahead, play the video. Thank you so much. The American spirit is alive, Scotty.
This is a God movement. This is way bigger than all of us. It is truly we, the people, taking our power back.
Yes, Kim, and I'll come back to you, but I do want, Mark, you've got some great thoughts to share. You know, Mark, some people, I think fewer rather than more, but some people are still unclear what's really going on with these open borders. They don't understand there's an agenda behind it, that the government, the federal government, our state governments, part of this global cabal that really wants to take America down. You know, the great Michael Savage, radio syndicated host for many years, said, borders, language, and culture make a nation. And they're trying to tear those three things down. Mark, what say you about the agenda here?
Well, the agenda is like we all know. Look, we you know, there has to come a time where the border crisis has to stop, and these people have to be vetted that we bring into the country. But the true reality of this is, and Scotty, you and I have talked about this, Kim and I have talked about it, the invasion has happened. I mean, these people are infiltrated in every city and every town. They're sitting there waiting for orders, and we're paying them to live out of our own tax money. I mean, there's a switch sooner or later. It's going to be go time, and it's very critical for every household to be prepared for any crisis in any such manner that could take place. Now, I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see innocent people getting hurt. But the reality is the cabal, as we call it, has already been infiltrating for years, and there's cells laying everywhere.
Indeed, you know, Mark, it's really it's part of the satanic cabal agenda, and I don't think we have to dwell on it with this audience. I think most of us understand what's really going on. Kim, there's a constitutional aspect to this, isn't there? There's an obvious violation of our Constitution here. Would you explain that?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. You know, so many of us, you know, we know our basic constitutional rights. You know what I mean? Our freedom to voice, the freedom to speak our truth, right? And then our freedom to bear arms. That's really what most of us know. But I'll tell you what, there is something that is so important that we really need to understand. Our southern border is wide open, and there's an absolute breach of Article 4, Section 4. I want to read this to you. So this is in the Constitution. It says, the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republic form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. This is a national breach of security. We are in the midst of invasion, and they are allowing it, and they're not doing anything about it. Now, we see Abbott taking some steps there. We see the National Guard stepping in now, but we also know that the National Guard is telling Homeland Security to pack their bags, right? They're telling them to pack sand. So what are the repercussions of that going to be? Are we going to be able to truly take our country back? That's a good question.
You know, Kim, I want to talk for a minute about
Scotty, we've lost your image for some reason, Scotty. Forgive me. Just check your camera, maybe tap it and retap.
All right. 1 second, Sasha, please.
Is it just me? Kim, can you see Scotty?
No, his camera's gone. We lost him.
Can you hear me, Sasha?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
Can hear you fine, Scotty.
Handsome in that circle. We missed that handsomeness. So
okay,
that is key. Article 4, Section 4. I mean, that is gold in our hands. I mean, if we utilize the tools we have, I'd like to say we've got the Constitution and we've got God's word. If we don't know what it says, how the heck can we wield the sword? Scotty, you're back and you're handsome. I see you.
Thank you.
So we got to wield the sword. We need to know what the Constitution says, and we need to hold them accountable to Article 4, Section 4.
Kim, I want to talk about what people can do if you can't make it to this rallies and to join our convoy. There's still a lot you can do to help us. We're really calling on all truckers and bikers and veterans, elected law enforcement, elected officials, business owners, ranchers, mama bears, all freedom-loving Americans can pitch in here. Kim, tell people how they can help
I love
with
it.
donations and other
We have
things.
had so many people step up and say, hey, I want to help. You know, Great American Pizza, they are feeding the convoy. That's pretty phenomenal. Those that are in their neck of the woods, right? Or those coming in from the northern states. Now, other ways that people can really help us is we have a GoFundMe. It's called, I'm sorry, forgive me. We have a Give, Send, Go. We like Give, Send, Go. GiveSendGo.com/take our border back. Now, I can't use that money. Scotty, you can't use that money. Mark, you can't use that money, but we can use the money for the convoy. And once this is done, where our border is taken back, guess what? We've set the system up to where it goes to a domestic violence shelter. It goes to Silent Voices. It goes to the rescue mission. We have things set up that this goes back to actually helping people. So you can go, our listeners can go to GiveSendGo.com/take our border back. What do we need? I mean, here's the reality. Our rallies, do you know how much a stage is in San Diego for a rally? The quotes I've been getting are like $3,500, ridiculous. So we're trying to figure out, you know, what's the best way. We really are being good stewards of what the money that's been given to us. But everything costs something, and we want to make sure that those important things are really taken care of. And that's why donating to GiveSendGo.com/take our border back makes a real difference.
And Mark, I know you're calling upon ex-military and Navy SEALs, and even have some friends that are going to provide some air support for security. Is there anything else, Mark, you want to add about helping on your end?
No, let's talk about our back. So, something come up earlier today. I would tell everyone that shows up to bring a chair, bring a blanket if you want to sit on a blanket. I was going through the list, and we have to circle back, and that arose earlier today, and so I want to encourage people to bring a chair, bring a blanket if they want to sit down. Make sure they got water in their car, maybe a meal, like a sandwich or something in the car. Now we're trying to put together some activities at these places, and some may have some food there and some drinks there, and some may not. We're still working on some of those things, so just want to say that. Just to make sure I get that out in the open. But as far as all the other, obviously, Scotty, we can't be responsible for people. They're responsible for themselves. Okay. We're doing the best that we can do using law enforcement and the tools that God has given us to use for the protection of these people. But ultimately, I mean, you've got to have someone watching your SIGs and making sure that you know your surroundings. And there will be, in my opinion, there will be an infiltrator somewhere here and there along the way, and we need to be looking out. And if you see one of these, find a guy. You'll recognize security. Find them, let them know that they're there. That way we can assess it and get rid of the situation.
What is the likelihood of people being cuffed and dragged off into the basement like January the 6th? What is the likelihood?
Good question.
Obviously, Sasha, I can't predict the future, but I will tell you, every location's been methodically thought out, and the process and the sheriffs and the police are on board in these counties. And these are our biggest supportive counties on these border walls that we could possibly have. So I would tell you, I would think it would be very unlikely.
Yeah, Sasha, the police and the sheriffs and the police in the where we're going in these three locations, they're fully supporting us.
Well, friends, very exciting stuff, and much grease behind your elbow on this. Kim Yesa, thank you. Mark Anthony, thank you. Scotty, thanks for anchoring the segment.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Francis.
All good. So we're going to keep abreast of this campaign, Scotty. I would like to cover this again in a fortnight, just to keep the pace up.
Yep, we'll be right at the event, Sasha.
Very good. All right, Scotty, stand by. I'm just going to refer to my notes here. Friends, G Money, self-proclaimed Bitcoin maximalist. G went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in 2016 and has been mentoring people on all things Bitcoin and self-custody ever since. He is currently working actually with my team to develop the new Earth coin, and runs a Telegram channel helping onboard and teach people how to get started with Bitcoin and keeping people informed about crypto in general. He believes that the crypto space, as it's known, can be intimidating and confusing with a lot of scammers. And his goal is to ensure that people are properly educated with the right technology and tools to ensure the safest and most secure way to work with a Bitcoin. G Money, very happy to have you on the show today.
Hey, my brothers on the front lines of the freedom movement. You guys are the counterinsurgents. And so it's an honor to be a part of this and with you guys tonight. How are you?
Thanks, G. I'm very good. I'm the one that has more hair. He's the one that has less hair. But other than that, we're both brothers in arms and stand very much eyeball to eyeball. G, can you give us a 3-minute elevator status quo 2024? How bad is it looking?
Well, I mean, Happy New Year, right? We are in the thick of the clown show in 2024. And so, yeah, I mean, look, we've gone a long way since the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. 2023, the Federal Reserve went negative 114 billion, right? This is the first time the Federal Reserve has ever pegged 114. And this is a private corporation that prints money. They lost $114 billion last year. And so we've got some exciting news with Bitcoin, right? The ETF was just approved. That was just approved on January 11th. And no, I mean, all systems go. We have the halving coming up in April, which means Bitcoin becomes a lot less scarce. 2023 saw a huge rise in the hash rate. So the military, the network that protects us, just absolutely going bonkers. And we're onboarding the countries that need it the most, right? Americans are still a little arrogant about this technology to some degree. And so we are onboarding those that need it most in a fair distribution of this new wealth, this new energy that has been blessed to humanity.
What is a Bitcoin maximalist?
Well, I'm a toxic person in some of my values because we've reached a red line with the evil cabal powers that be. Okay. They have pretty much taken control of every institution, they've bastardized every form of education, our food, basically every faucet that we live in, they've taken control over. And the last frontier for these vampires is to control your every movement as a human in transactions in just your daily life, right? And so we now have a choice. Humanity is at a crossroads to how much more are we going to give these people? Are we going to lay down and give them full control of digital programmable money, the CBDC, right? The central bank digital currency. Are we going to allow them to do that? Or are we going to step into the side of freedom? And are we going to take our power back as humans? Are we going to be able to work together to fully democratize power to the individual in an unlimited sense?
Very good. Very good. Okay. Now, I have to refer to my notes. Sorry, if something's gone wrong with my screen, so I have to toggle to another screen. Many in this audience will know, may not know, forgive me, how much the global financial layout has changed. As one example, BRICS, the gold-backed IGO made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has doubled in size. So what does that mean for more established economies like the US and the European countries?
Yeah, great question. And so we have to look at the US dollar as a network, okay? The network of information that we use to exchange energy as humans, right? The dollar is the far most biggest network on the planet. Now, if you were going to replace this network that has stolen, enslaved, and basically, robbed us of our energy as humans our entire life, how would you go about doing that? Well, you need probably a multifaceted attack on this network, okay? And so BRICS is part of what I believe a network attack against the use of the dollar, right? Because these other countries that have gotten together can now use their own currency, right? They're backing it with gold, they're backing it with some precious metals, they're backing it with different commodities versus a fiat dollar that is backed by literally nothing, right? The dollar is backed by nothing. And so what you have is an attack on the dollar through these other nations and through their GDP. They're just going to ignore the actual use of the dollar and they're going to use their own currencies, which will make it much harder for us to sustain our dominance across the planet as the reserve currency, right? If people don't want access to dollars, they're going to become a lot less they're going to be worth a lot less more in terms of people wanting access to this information network, right? The dollar network as a network will be will be tossed aside to some degree. People won't have to use it anymore, and I don't think people will want to use it when they know they can use a currency that will actually keep its value over a long period of time.
Very good. Scotty Sachs, you got the floor.
G Money, pleasure to meet you.
What's up, my brother?
First there was G Force, then there was G Man. I know a guy named G Man. Now there's G Money. There's another G spot. I mean, there's another G, but we won't talk about it. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
There are people in circles that I have had long conversations that say, look, the cryptocurrency that's around, the Bitcoins, all but a few, which we know are pegged to the new financial system, the supposedly XRPs and the XLM Stellar. I don't know much about this, so forgive me if my question comes off a bit naive.
Problem.
But there are folks telling me that Bitcoin is part of the Federal Reserve System, and everything that's part of the Federal Reserve System, when it goes down, is going down, including that we know the dollar's going down, right? We're going to have an asset-backed gold, silver, other in-ground assets, I believe, will be backing currency. What do you say to those that say crypto's dead, it's going down with the Federal Reserve System?
Well, I mean, I would say these people probably didn't do their own research. They probably looked at some, fancy articles from CNN or MSNBC, or, there's a lot of clowns out there, right? The network of these central bankers want to confuse the people. They do not want people to know about this technology because it literally robs them of their control structure. And so what people have to understand is the basic elements of what makes Bitcoin special. Okay. If the Federal Reserve was going to create a cryptocurrency, they probably wouldn't make it open source. They probably wouldn't make an absolute finite amount. They probably wouldn't let anybody in the world have access to it. And they probably would have the ETF or their own access to this thing, right when it was released back in 2009. And so what we have is this network that I would believe was created. You can call it a godlike entity. You can call it maybe some white hat military guys. You can call it whatever you want. But what we have is an immaculate conception of a network, proof of work, that anybody on the planet has access to, and that humanity was given a 15-year head start to this new frontier, to this new digital battleground, okay? The institutions, right? 93% of the entire monetary supply has been mined over those 15 years. What does that mean? That means the banks, institutions, and governments have access to the last 7% that's available over the next 100 years. Okay. Now, if it was a Federal Reserve and they wanted to switch over to this system, right, they can't censor transactions. They can't confiscate your wealth. There's certain things they can't do as part of a permissionless, trustless system. So for people that say this is part of the Federal Reserve, well, why would they design something that literally eliminates the need for them, right? It comes down to elements in the technology, and people have to understand not only that, right? The finance part is kind of the fun part. But the real fun part is this actually gives individuals the absolute untapped power, okay? Because what this does is this gives an individual the ability to save in a unfuckwithable system that governments, militaries, nobody can mess with you. If you figure out how to take cold storage, I help people do it, right? I'm working with Sasha and his team to create the New Earth coin, which is something I'm super excited about. We have to get out of thinking in the terms of their fiat system, right? We were given technology protected by a decentralized power source that an individual can take access to. And then once you have access in your own self-custodial wallet, you have the network backing you up, right? You don't need a military. You're literally backed up by the miners all across the planet, who, by the way, right now are 3.5 times the size of the United States Navy as a distributed power source. So if anybody wants to come after you and your property, they have to come up with a network that is 3.5 times the size of the United States Navy distributed across the globe to confiscate, to censor, to do anything to fuck with you as a human and your energy. Okay. And so people need to realize that the monetary part is kind of the boring part. the real exciting part about a Bitcoin is it gives power back to the people in the ultimate form of energy and savings and pure freedom that nobody on the planet can mess with. And so I'm a little bit passionate about this, but
Trump has said that if he gets in as president, which he most assuredly appears to be, he will be banishing CBDCs. What are your reflections on that?
Yeah, look, I've been following Trump for a long time. If you follow a lot of my research, you'll notice there's a lot of Trump behind me, that Trump is definitely a Bitcoin maximalist. He's always been, but he couldn't come out and say, hey, guys, go buy Bitcoin, right? Because he understands the global slavery that the dollar has done to the entire world. And so he knows that in order for make this to be a fair, distributed wealth system that is going to be replacing the old, tired fiat system, he can't just come out and tell everybody, right? People have to learn on their own about this new technology. And so, look, him coming out against CBDCs, I said he would have to pivot. If he is going to be the choice for 2024, he is going to have to pivot on CBDCs. He's going to have to say something about CBDCs because Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, they both came out big times against the CBDC. They talked about crypto. They talked about Bitcoin. Okay. And Trump had to do it. Trump hasn't said anything, by the way. I've been like waiting for this for a very, very long time. He finally came out against it, which proves my, kind of proves some of my research that he's going to be the guy that's going to take us hopefully to, to the end of this. But, Trump still may be a rug pull in the political scene. I still think that we need to expose our fraudulent election systems. And so if Joe Biden gets 111.1 million votes and, they deem him the winner, well, I think, people will finally realize how fraudulent our system is. But I do think there are entities behind the scenes letting this play out to awaken the entire world about our monetary system as being the biggest source of theft on the planet.
Indeed, not just the biggest source of theft, but also the source code for systemic and endemic war, disease, and poverty, certainly for the last century.
Got a question, G. Explain how a new coin, like the New Earth coin, how does the mining part, how does crypto mining work in this sense of a new coin?
Okay, well, the new coin that we're talking about, New Earth coin, is an amazing new way to think about how we as humans and as people that want to bring about this collective consciousness in new developments can come together and actually work on something that we believe in. Okay, we don't have to use the old, tired fiat vampire system. Okay, New Earth coin represents a dichotomy, a divergence from the old system. Okay, to where individuals who want to support a project, right, that literally is a new evolution in human destiny, right, will break apart. And so what people can do all across the planet now is they can actually support a project that are in principles with natural laws of the world, of Earth. And so what Sasha and the New Earth Sanctuary are building is a way for people to actually support this project. Okay. And so New Earth Coin represents people's ability to support this amazing new project in Mexico. Okay. And so what this represents is a way to, as an investment vehicle, an equity investment into this new project. Okay. The underlying currency is going to be Bitcoin. This is a way to own or invest in this amazing new project that will bring about new technologies to help further the human condition in a positive, regenerative way that I think is going to be amazing and is going to be a model for what our future looks like. But the mining is something a little bit different. In this sense of the New Earth coin, this is a community development, equity project to where humans can now support something without tapping into the general vampire system. We don't have to go to Wall Street. We don't have to go to these bankers and try to work within their system. We were given a system that we can create our own ways to navigate and to support each other. And we can then, in this pure, non-corruptible energy system, can use that to further progress on these new projects and incentives and structures.
Beautifully stated, G-Money. Thank you. And friends, we're going to wrap up the broadcast here. Just to say that G and I will be on stage together at the Conscious Life Expo in California and Los Angeles on the, I believe it's the 10th of February, which is not too long from now, a couple of weeks from now. Joanne in the green room, just make sure you put the links in, please, if people want to come and see G and I. What we're going to be doing is unveiling the New Earth coin. And I'll tell you, my team are really thrilled that over the last many months, we've been working and blessed to be able to work with G Money on this. We regard him as the alpha omega on this subject, and architecting this kind of source coding for regenerative economy and reclamation of our financial and economic sovereignty, the capacity now to actually elevate art, beauty, and consciousness in our lives, because we step back from the fiction of the false light, luciferic and satanic economy. It's as simple as that. It's how we step out of dream spell. It's how we step back out of witchcraft. Spells and bonds is witchcraft, friends. Signing your name in block black capital letters, filling out your baby's name onto a U.S. Treasury bond, aka a birth registration certificate, signing your goddamn tractor or your farm or your bicycle or your vehicle over to the state, to the crown, is a mark of insanity from which you and I have to awaken, because nobody's going to sound the alarm bell for us. And that's what G's work and life is dedicated toward. That is what Scotty Sachs's life and work is dedicated towards, and reclamation of sovereignty and the capacity for us to speak our truth from the heart. Anyway, friends, G, thank you for joining us today. Scotty, thank you for being the perfect co-pilot. And yes, indeed, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Maybe G and I will do a couple of drops as well when we're together in LA onto social media. I'll try and inveigle him into a hotel room so we can do a couple of live drops and really go into a bit more depth on what we're launching to the world in a couple of weeks' time from now. Scotty Sachs, last word to you.
Well, Sasha, as always, Joanne puts together a great lineup of guests. It's always great to host with you. And boy, it's going to be a great year, Sasha. Don't you feel a lot better going into this year than last year?
Well, I feel a lot more clarity. I'm sad to say that the beloved Cardinal, who I was on my way to visit next week in Rome for 5 days en route to California to hook up with G, he went into a coma a few days ago. He's 93 years of age. He is old, but it is strange, is it not, that when he asked me to do the intel drop that I did a few short weeks ago when I was in Malibu, and I made that dump on Scott McKay's show about the River Seine in the Swimming Olympics in Paris being ground zero for where disease X is likely to be released through pathogenic strains in canisters. That was the intel given to me by the Cardinal. He asked me expressly to tell the world. I did it on the Patriot Street Fighter Network. And within days, Men in Black in a suitcase come in and inject him in his cloisters by best accounts. He called and told us that. Said, I've been administered with a Vatican-sponsored booster. We had no choice. It was against my will. And we kind of knew that that was it, TikTok. So bless his heart. If I'll monitor what's happening in the days ahead, whether he dies or whether he stays in a coma. But put it this way, I was on my way to spend a few days with him in the Vatican, whereupon he was going to really stand down the patriarchy, stand down 2,000 years of Jesuitical inspired patrimony of the status quo. He's no longer with us. He's not likely to recover from the coma. But isn't it strange that every time we get close to some real revelation, that the dark hand makes its move? And the Cardinal in question, who I will name on stage at the Conscious Life Expo, if I'm given permission by those around him to name him and to honor his memory, because Interpol and U.S. military are now on the case. They pinned me against the wall later that day, and Scott McKay, after we made that broadcast. And those guys were very grateful for the intel drop. Very grateful, Scotty. And they said, we knew something was coming down the pike. We didn't know when, we didn't know where. But what you've just described, the Seine River in Paris, which is going to be used as the platform for the actual swimming Olympics. They'll be swimming in the river. That, they said, made absolute sense when they heard the intel drop. So it could be that the good cardinal, unnamed for the time being, did indeed deliver his payload. And he said, I'm an old man. I don't expect to survive any of this revelation, but I will not leave this world without speaking to the evils of the sodomites who've taken control of the Vatican. In any event, it's a bit enigmatic, but I'm just saluting the man who's clearly hovering around in the ethers in a coma. Great men like him, great men and women like Cathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips should always be in the forefront of our thoughts as we now, the last of the defense in the front line, in the trenches, those amongst us who are still committing our life, our movement, our time and motion to truth and disclosure. We carry the spirit and the strength, not just of those folks, but of many great ancestors. In any event, I'll end it there. G Money, thank you so very much for joining us today on AGN. Greatly look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time. Scotty Sachs, thank you for winging us today.
Love you guys.
All right, friends. God bless you. Joanne in the green room, thanks, darling. You've done a great job today, and I'll speak to you on the phone shortly. Bye, G. All right, friends. Monday, 22nd of January, 11:51 a.m. here in Bali. I just want to let you know that if you're watching and you're in Bali, and I think we've got a fairly big audience today, I will be doing an event here. Boom. There we go. This is a Lazarus Initiative related event, a Q&A I'll be doing, navigating the upshift here at my home, adjunct to the New Earth Haven in Bali. You'll all know where it is. Come before sunset, 5 p.m. onwards. We'll meet at Akasha at the New Earth Haven, and then pootle across here to my villa, and I'll be doing open house event here. So yes, alerting the gooks and the spooks as well. You're all welcome, you motherfuckers. Your day is over. Anyway, Scotty Sachs in the green room. Love you, guy. Joanne, thank you. Friends, ending the stream now.